Hello and welcome to my tutorial on beginners knitting. I'm going to show how to cast on using your thumb and the basic knit stitch in this tutorial. I'm using a 4.5mm knitting needle, although normally for double knit, which is the yarn I'm using today, you would use a 4mm for the normal knitting. It's just a little bit easier to show you on a slightly larger needle for the casting on. So we take the yarn, and you need to remember that it's the length of the piece that you start with that will enable you to do the actual cast on. So I'm only going to cast on 20 stitches for this tutorial just to keep it short, but obviously if you're going to cast on a lot more you would need a bigger starting length of yarn. So we start off by wrapping the yarn around your thumb, and then you pop in the needle into the loop. You're going to bring the longer length that's attached to the ball of yarn, it's the shorter length that's here. We're going to wrap that around and then slip it off your thumb and onto the needle so that we've got the first stitch. And then again, holding the shorter length of yarn in your fingers, excuse me, we're going to then again wrap the wool around your thumb, slip the needle into the loop, bring the yarn around the needle and then slip that loop onto the needle. We'll carry on in the same way until we've got 20. I'll do it quite slowly so that you can see the actual movement of the yarn. So holding the yarn in your fingers, we're going to loop your thumb, put the needle into that loop, wrap the yarn around and let the loop slide onto the needle. So again, onto your thumb, wrap around, pull this needle back and slip the loop onto the needle. And we'll just carry on in the same way until you've got the required number of stitches. Try not to pull the loops once they're on the needle too tight. It needs to be able to slide up and down the needle. It might take you a few attempts before you can get it to the right tension there. So loop onto the thumb, needle into the loop, wrap the yarn round, pull the needle back and slip the loop onto the needle. Into the loop, wrap the yarn around, slip the loop onto the needle. It gives a really nice neat edge to the knitting to do the cast on with the thumb method. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. I'll carry on until I've got the 20 stitches. So there's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20. And you can now see that this yarn, the excess yarn, has got quite a lot smaller. You can always use this for sewing up the seam if you're making a garment. So once we've got the 20 stitches, I'm now going to show you the basic knit stitch. So this needle goes into the other hand, and we're going to pick up the other needle. So we now need to keep this shorter length yarn out of the way because we're going to knit with the longer length yarn from the ball of yarn. So the first stitch, we're going to take the needle and put it into the loop of the first stitch. Make sure that the needle has gone underneath the stitch rather than on top. We're then going to take the yarn, we're going to wrap it around the right hand needle. We're going to pull that needle back so that we've now got the stitch onto this needle, and then we're going to slide to fasten off, and then again into the second stitch, remembering that this needle needs to go under, so your right needle is going underneath the left needle. We take the yarn, we wrap it around, we're going to pull this back so that the stitch is now on the right hand needle, and we slide off into the third stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull the right needle back and on top of the left needle and slide off. So we've now done 3 knit stitches. Into the stitch underneath the left hand needle, wrap the yarn around, pull the needle back and slide off. So into the stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull the needle back and slide off. Because we've got these quite loose on this needle, they're going to slide off quite easily. If you've done them a little bit tight, you'll find that it is a bit more difficult, so you must remember to cast on quite loosely. So again, we're going to go into the stitch, we're going to wrap the yarn around, we're going to pull back and slide off. We just carry on in the same way all the way to the end of the row. So we're going to into the stitch, right hand needle underneath the left needle so that we've got both needles in the stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull the right hand needle back and slide the stitch off. And we just carry on all the way to the end of your stitches. If you're just starting out, I would only cast on the 20 stitches and just do a practice piece. Keep working the same stitches until you're actually quite at ease with the knit stitch. And then in a future tutorial, excuse me, I'll show you how to do a purl stitch. So into the stitch, the right hand needle underneath the left hand needle, wrap the yarn around, pull back and slip off. Into the stitch, yarn around, pull the needle back and slip off. Into the stitch, yarn around, pull the needle back and slip off. Into the stitch, yarn around, pulling back and slip off. Into the stitch, yarn around, pull back and slip off. Into the stitch, yarn around, pull back and slip off, and then with the last stitch again do exactly the same where we slip off. So we've now got 1 row of knit stitch. To start the next stitch, you just work exactly the same, that we're going to put the right hand needle into the stitch, underneath the left needle, wrap around and pull back, slip off, and we work exactly the same way to the end of the second row. And you can just keep doing this same stitch until you've got a little swatch that you've made. And that's how easy it is to do the knit stitch and the cast on. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll put more knitting tutorials on really soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.